Welcome to the 7th episode of the Celluvoid for the week of June 24, 2022. Today I'm joined by Nikolas Candido. Born in Niterói, Brazil, Nikolas is a filmmaker and author who graduated from Cuba's International Film and Television School. He's a member of Super Off, a Super 8 active film collective from Sao Paulo. He currently studies comparative literature at the University of Geneva in Switzerland, where he has taught Super 8 courses, and his work is composed by an immersion in Super 8, an analog process, inner voice acting, and non-traditional storytelling. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to join you.
Is it evening over there right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a special time here actually because we have like long evenings. So yeah, it's about to start and the light only falls down like around 10. It's quite special time.
We can get started. I always ask people a really general question, their origin of how they got started in making films and working with analog. When did film come into your life?
Very good question. Actually, I mean, sorry, I just forgot to say that first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation because I'm quite glad to join this interview because it's like a podcast. This podcast is like quite a good idea since it's concerned about like art, film, Celluloid, and of course Super 8.
Thank you for saying that. I started this podcast in 2020 when we were all kind of
pandemic.
And I think, we'll get into your piece later just about filmmaking during COVID. And it was just so interesting. The first few episodes in this kind of first volume of this series was just talking to people and their process of editing a project from, 2019 or something they had just started January, February of 2020, and how you are coping as a filmmaker. So yeah,
exactly.
I'm glad that you uplifted that. It's been so fun to make these so far, and thank you for everyone who's found this podcast recently. I normally don't self-promote too hard with this podcast. It's been kind of whoever finds it. But a step out of my comfort zone. And I think you and I kind of met randomly as well. So I just thought you would be great for this, since we both, share a likeness for Super 8. So
yeah, yes, completely agree. And I think it's like a quite nice initiative, and I hope it can grow and also like expand towards like people that will enter in contact with film and eventually with Super 8, hopefully. So yes, I love your question also because it makes me somehow like move backwards in a sort of symbolic voyage, produce like a sort of creative void, to use your I really love since we are in Celluvoid, I really love this word, like because it's quite dense and it's full of meanings. So I was also thinking that although I'm in my early 30s, I have lots of memories already, like mountains and mountains of memories, and yet many things to experience, like including my future films and projects. So I will try to be brief in this sort of trip backwards past. Uh, just like, I mean, every time we tell a story, we have to choose some little points, right? So I was thinking that, for example, it's important to mention that, like back there, my parents put me and my brother Ulises in an experimental school, like during our childhood, in our village that it's called Niterói, uh, and southwest of Brazil. It was quite special school where we had hand contact with raw materials like wood, paper. We also like were practicing a lot of kitchen sewing, even like among plants, some agriculture activities. So it was a quite special. So I suppose that my experience with art in general starts there, since my experience with art has a lot to do with hands and the contact with material. But of course, that also leads me to the writing process. I have been writing with my, if you allow me to exaggerate, like with my left hand.
Oh, I'm left-handed too. Okay, no, like no
Too. Oh,
worries. Like
great.
people always look at me
I
with three heads. Like when I say that, I'm like, why is that so? You're fine.
I mean, and in the same time, I think other point that is worth to mention. I mean, I will not make a big biography, even because I think this past is still like to work with, and
Mhm.
I mean, we have to balance things between memory and like the future, right?
Mhm.
Also because the present like updates the future, the past, like depending on what we do. But yeah, quite philosophical question. I mean, just coming back. Yeah, and the same time, like for example, we used to go to cinema and family like every time we could, and it was a kind of ritual, like a very special ritual, because afterwards we used to discuss those films together, and it was a way of being together also, even in the dark room or cinema room. All these words to say that I feel related to, I mean, to my family also, but also to friends that are cinema lovers since like I know them. All this it's like a sort of web of affection that leads me also like connects me to cinema and to writing, and that this spiritual experience of cinema and also like writing is a very important point that is present since my childhood.
I'm very curious about why Super 8 over all other mediums. Is it something that you see that's very poetic to match with your words, since a lot of your work is like working with monologues, like inner monologues, and I find it interesting you steer to Super 8 over digital or
Well, it's quite actually quite big story. So the challenge is like always trying to be like synthetic. So, for example, there are two or three important episodes in my life that drew me to Super 8, and it's also related to this kind of web of affection and people that I met in the on the road. Like, so I mean, for example, once I happened to be in Buenos Aires, I met an Argentinian psychologist and social worker who's a great friend nowadays, Agustina Taruscio. And she was like experimenting with this format. And I was quite impressed about the power of those textures coming from those quite simple cameras. I was quite young, and I was like quite surprised about all this new textures that at the same time they had like an age and a different support. Somehow it's also related to my childhood since I also had like the contact with like, for example, K7 and other like analogs devices. But for example, down there in Buenos Aires, like Agustina also took me to an important film laboratory for the independent scene, which is our Arcoiris Super Age, like it's very important still nowadays. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that I mean independent cinema of Super Age in Buenos Aires, also in Brazil, of course. Uh, it's super dense, and they were a web of independent cinema, and Super H was extremely important for them. We could talk a lot about Super H because it's like a format at the same time. It's like a camera itself. It's quite special. Many of the Super H cameras, they are like quite light if we compare to like 16 or even 35, and they are somehow more easy because you don't have to charge, for example, the chassis. You only put the cartridge inside, and of course, I mean, you can play with different speeds and light variation like diaphragm, but actually You can also film it in automatic if it's your first time, and you can leave the magic of this process. Of course, like in 16 millimeters also and 35, but I don't know. I have the impression that Super H allows you to make cinema, to be in touch with film in a more simplified way. It leads also to the economical question that, for example, Super H cameras, they're like cheaper. They used to be, I mean, normally they are cheaper than other cameras if we compare 16, 35. The cartridge, it's like quite expensive. Like normally 3 minutes, depending, I mean, more or less 3 minutes if you depending the speed that you use. So yeah, it's like let's say little material we compare to what you can buy in a 16 millimeters film, for example. But yes, I still prefer Super H because it leads me to a simplified process in film. Super H allows you also to be minimalist in many ways.
It's interesting to think about the history of these cameras since they were first advertised as whole movie cameras for people to film their families. So there's already kind of sentimental value there. Everything you just said. Like when I shoot with it, it's just so nice to feel, yeah, like less pressure during production. Sometimes I've gone out with no tripod and I've done everything handheld. It's kind of a rhythm and feeling to that. Yeah, you kind of make what you can with it.
Yeah, yes, I think I mean it's quite nice what you said. It's quite fair for me because I totally agree because there is like this experience of freedom that is much more close to it. I mean, maybe I don't know other experimental filmmakers. I mean, they don't have to agree with me in this point. I feel much more free with Super H. For example, I have a cinema partner. His name is Tetsuya Maruyama. He finally bought a Bolex because he has been dreaming of that and all. And it was quite funny because we are not living anymore in the same country. I was there in Brazil some months ago, and we finally met. And he said, "Nico, I finally have the Bolex, and it's. I mean, I love it, and it's nice. But oh my God, I'm so tired. I have been carrying it all the day. Like it's so heavy." You know,
Yeah.
it's also a question of stamina or something like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Super 8 cameras are super light. Like you could just throw one with no effort. You can take a Bolex to the gym, I feel like.
But I would also like to add that, for example, the other point that I didn't mention of Super H was that I had this former experience in Buenos Aires. Then I entered in a film school years later. In this film school, I mean, I met like all kinds of filmmakers, let's put it this way. And there was someone that was running a film festival which is called like Super Off, and it's like a Super H collective from São Paulo, Brazil. This person, who is like, his name is Rodrigo Souza e Souza. He was like very enthusiastic. I think he's one of the greatest Super H enthusiasts in the world. And you know, like I was just in the regular process of film school, like just submitting works, but I just felt like lots of distance towards Super H, and this time that I experienced that. So somehow, like Rodrigo, he was like person that said to me, "No, there's something that there. Like you just have to update it somehow." Of course, he didn't say it in those ways, but even better. Then. And we started to work together because he was like also there doing a master, and he brought his festival to the film school because Super Off is a film festival, and at the same time, it's like this collective of Super H where people gets to know Super H and the process of it. This includes like developing film, like projection, but also like the former process, which is like conceiving the film experience, like one shot film. He asked me and one of our fellows that was also like a documentarist, and he asked us like if we could join him like to the presentation of it. So it was like quite exciting, and this like updated former experience with Super H. And then like I crossed it somehow like the film school with this this baggage, and also it's like a film school. AICTV, like film school. I don't know if you know this film school. Like it's quite close to United States actually.
Oh, you
And
said
what
this is the one in Cuba.
in
You're
Cuba? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I have never heard of this one actually.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, so I'm kind of enthusiast of the
No,
film school
I'm good.
because like it's an international film school, very and it's a very special film school where like we could actually meet all those kinds of people that were like coming from different parts of the world. We were like experiencing in the sense of like in the material sense also like because we were like shooting in 16 millimeters. We were not shooting in Super H, but because Super H was like a workshop, it was like non-official workshop in the film school. But you know, the film school allows those webs that it's for me it's amazing. Like it's what a film school should provide somehow, even in non-official terms. That I mean, all those things like are adding into the knowledge and to the experience of cinema.
I mean, you led right into my next question about super off, and I didn't realize it was so it's like student run, or is it's like people coming from outside the school or the university to help organize this?
Yes, I mean, actually, it's like a film collective and film festival based in Brazil. In this special case, like we had the chance of like being there while Rodrigo he was there. I mean, the president of this film festival. I mean, normally it's a film festival that's based in Brazil, São Paulo, and I mean they're quite heroes because like they do Super H in a quite complex country, which is like Brazil, where it is also hard to find Super H cartridge to film. And yet they are quite big film festival encouraging Super H and introducing this format to lots of people who never touched a Super H camera. So yeah, it's like a form of encouraging access to Super H because there's also this discussion about like access and Super H and art in general. Brazil is a quite complex country, a very rich country in many terms, but also like very unequal country. This collective actually is providing the access to lots of people who also like many of them didn't have direct contact to art. They have the chance to experience like something that is touched them in their lives, as it also touched me in my personal life, and I think it touched many people. I don't know, maybe I mean in Brazil we say I'm suspected to speak because I love it. But yes, I think there's something quite special in film in general, but Super H also.
And then I guess it's a good time to move into that you are teaching. Are you teaching at the University of Switzerland um, at the moment?
Yeah, actually, I made like two workshops there and the cultural activities, and it was about yes, like encouraging Super H in this institution, which had already like some history of Super H, but it was like something that was somehow like not active. It was like a way to encourage that and to also like experience new approach in a new country in a foreign language. And yes, I mean it doesn't have to do directly to comparative literature, but I think also like the comparative literature period in my life, which is finishing, it's over now, like allowed me to think all those difference between supports like literature, film, celluloid, paper, to try like a comparative gesture, those questions and think and bring it to my film language.
Okay, and then yeah, I also just like taking the time for people to just like walk through some work that you've sent over to me that I've took the time to watch. And yeah, this is so exciting work. The first one I wanted to speak about was the sound of the time. Could you explain like how this came to be? I think my main thing was just really fascinated by how you've interwove archival footage with Super 8 and that kind of storytelling, the monologue, and how that came to be.
It was a 3 years and a half process
3 years.
for a short, yeah, for a short movie. Um, and actually now it's coming into light because also like the film was selected to be part of Marché de Film à Cannes, in Cannes International Film Festival. 3 years, almost 3 years and a half work. In lots of material like archive that belongs to EAMOD, like the foundation from Italy that gives the opportunity of filmmakers to work with their archive. One of my school film colleagues, JC Trumpis, filmmaker from Venezuela, living in Dominicana, he had this project of fiction. I mean, he already had like a script that was quite different actually about a sound engineer or a sound guy that was like chasing sounds and sounds that belonged to the past. And we had the opportunity to interview ex-Cuban soldier. Yeah, happens to be like Andres Rodriguez, and he has been like in many wars in Angola, in many wars that were like quite devastating wars. We were like listening to him and to his experience and trying to find a point where we could bring this fiction that JC was thinking, trying to recreate his experience without being disrespectful towards his memory. And at the same time, they worked a lot together, JC and Milena Fiore, who is an Italian film editor. She works in this archive. Quite interesting because during the pandemic, we established some dynamics of collaboration, and we were like many times discussing it like in different time zones. The process of editing it, that's why it took a lot of time to be ready because we were like having discussions. I mean, not fights, but discussions, like saying, no, but this come here and no, how about that? And yeah, and was like quite interesting process and quite dense also because yeah, it's about like writing and rewriting from the material that we have in hand.
Yeah, like what we were saying earlier about, I guess, looking back at the past. And then, yeah, with this, it's not completely a work of fiction, but it's a hybrid. I guess that word is thrown around a lot, and experimental, like bringing together genres. So, yeah, it's just really interesting to see that in this piece. And how was interviewing the soldier? Because I'm always curious when people reach out for, documentary work, like if they felt maybe a little sensitive at first, reserved almost to like start speaking about something so sensitive like as war. Like I'm curious like how, like, were they really up for it to like speak about it, or did this take them a bit of time?
Very good question because Andres, he's someone that I mean, he used to work in the film school because the film school is like quite far from La Habana. He was working there, and so everyone that has contact with workers and with the community of this film school in a deeper sense know him. He used to be quite present in our generation of film school, and there was also like a sort of intimacy towards him. I think he felt quite comfortable with us to share some very deep experience that we tried. Because I like this word, like to try, like the word "ise," like that comes also from trying, like when it comes to cinema, "ise," like it's always for me like a try, because then I mean, little digression, but I try to say to myself that, okay, I will try. I will try to do my best. I will try to experiment with that. Then I think I am already free of like imposition of success or something related to like some binary question of win or lose or something like that leads to this logic. I think uh, yeah, it's there was like trustfulness that it's very important in a documentary, and he also wanted to help us, and by telling his story, he was also, I felt at least that he was like somehow updating his experience because he was like representing it by gestures as you saw. I think that it's like also very beautiful and deep project because we were trying to conciliate the narrative dimension with something that unify us all, and you also, Amelia, like which is like experiment, putting the hands on it, and something unexpected comes from this experience that you cannot control everything, like for example in digital, that leads also to this question of limit, because in digital we know that we can film a lot, and when it comes to film you have this limit of the material that leads you to think much more, but not necessarily to have the control of everything, because the film material also has like a proper written that will suggest also other dimensions into this language. I really love to speak about the film process itself, like the material, but I could spend hours doing that. So,
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah, there's just so much you can do to film, really. Another question I had for you in another film is how with Super 8 you freezing on a frame in Super 8. Since I always feel like Super 8 is so it's fast, you know, like it almost feels like these scenes are just like whirring past the eye. But I do appreciate how you take a moment to just like focus on one frame, like or where that idea came from to just like hold on an image. And I think you talk about that too. And the following piece I wanted to speak about of how we as human beings, I guess like our attention span almost. Like I wrote in my questions of first I was really frustrated with this piece of BCM transit
the
because I
chincha,
was
many people are.
I was like,
It's good.
what is going on? Like, what's
Thanks
going
for
on here?
being honest. Yeah,
And
thanks.
then your title card comes up about nothing happens in this film. It made me think back to like Daisies, of that Czech New Wave film, of that subtitle at the start of Daisies that said, you know, people get upset over stomped lettuce or whatever, and like these crazy feminists like making a ruckus over a table. So, like, if you want to explain, because I know this also came from like a poem.
Yes, yes. Well, very. Yeah, I don't know how to answer this question, but thanks. Firstly, thanks for being honest. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. It's like a quite weird piece actually, and I'm still not sure about where. I mean, where and when I should keep showing this piece. For example, lately there was a curator, Lavinia Rata, if I'm pronouncing well. She's based in Berlin, and she called me to present this piece there in what she has like as a video fest in Berlin, and she really liked it. She was one of the unique I mean, she and other one other fellow they loved this piece, but I understand that it's a piece that it's quite actually. I think I was also in a time that I was trying to experiment the voices, but also like based. I would, in general terms, I think I was trying to be very conceptual. I mean, the concept of this film is like it's a question like how much can we stand into some darkness, because there's, like you said, like nothing happening a priori, like, but at the same time there are other things that are happening. It's a way to try to awake the sound sense, because we know that for example, I would say that in India the sound is not so I mean, for me, it's even most it's super important. Like it's one of the most important elements in cinema, because it's like audiovisual, right? But sound doesn't have the place that it should have, like, and the veil that it should have as a recognition. So in many terms, actually, I was dedicated to sound in this sense, trying to use this resource of, as you said, like freezing frames, but also like working with like different scale frames in order to encourage this sense. Also, like worth to mention that there is a Lithuanian writer and documentarist, Akvilė Žilionytė. Oh, by the way, she's yeah, of course, from the same country of Jonas Mekas, and she used to
Oh.
exchange letters with him when she was a teenager. And I said, Aquila, we need to do something with that. And she said to me, she promised me that she will look for those letters. And I'm keep waiting. By the way, I hope she listened to this podcast and
Wow.
smile.
I feel like that guy knows everyone. Like,
And actually, I mean, speaking about Jonas, I'm quite happy because I was going to Brazil, like little short story. Oh my God. Just to mention that I was going to Brazil. I was passing through Paris and I was randomly, really, like literally randomly, like walking, like, and I said, oh my God, I don't want to take a metro. I just want to go to the sea in the river. And I was asking people, my battery was dead and my phone battery was dead. And suddenly I arrived into a new gallery, many people, and they were like making the celebration of Jonas diaries and people were reading it, like, and I said, oh my God, it's not possible, I didn't verify now any of these things, like, so and of course there was like also Sebastian there, like Sebastian Mekas, his son, and lots of really like people that are into experimental cinema and that love it, that dedicate themselves to it. Yeah, just to mention that it's quite funny, like this unexpected things that happens. And of course, I wrote to Aquila to say, "Oh my God, like look what's happening." We were experimenting with voice mainly, trying to search this darkness, which is the Rumi poem, like search the darkness. So we were trying to search what was happening into this darkness. She helped me to formulate this concept, and I think we should get together to maybe, yeah, it's something that we have to discuss, me and her, like to maybe think a new cut of it, because it's also like something that is interesting nowadays, that we have the possibility of expand something that is there. But yeah, sometimes it's also good to advance to other to other works, right? Like not be stuck into something. Yeah.
yeah, I could see this like taking on another life of. I think we talked about like like expanded cinema and like kind of live performance. It would be interesting to hear you and a few other people like read this live with the projections, or if this is what you intended it to be like.
Yes, I think I was in this. I mean, I'm still on this mood, this general mood of, because I think I'm very now I'm very concentrated into cinema, but of course, like I think what also comparative literature has like given me the opportunity to think other formats and other forms of expanding this language. Actually, since my start point is cinema, I of course I'm interested about expanded cinema. I also like had the big opportunity to met Harun Farocki in Buenos Aires. I could I
Mm.
could watch his workshops just there. I was quite young. I said, "Hey, Harun, can I just be in your, because you needed, to postulate and everything." And he just shook hand with me and he said, "I wait for you tomorrow at noon." And I was, of course, the guy who was like switching off the light and switching off. But he allowed me to be there, and of course, I learned a lot. And he has like a enormous contribution towards like also expanded cinema, and also like a critical way to think cinema and cinema processes and everything.
The last film that is so prevalent I wanted to talk about was Fragments to Celine, because I
Hmm.
mean, opening this podcast, I was talking about, the state of the world that we're all in with filmmaking, and this piece is no different. Before talking about the film, I'm just curious about like you during March 2020, if you can like set the scene of your mind and like what you're going through, and observing Brazil and like the state of the country and everything.
Yeah, thanks for this question and for I mean, allowing some discourse towards it, or like speak about that, because, for example, I have the impression that now I happen to be in Geneva, and also like it's a very special city. People lived the pandemic in a different way, but I happened to be there in Brazil during like considerable time between first and second waves. There were like many things going on. Brazil is a big subject. I don't master it, because I think no one master it, because I have this theory that I think no one master its own country. Brazil and Latin America, it's like quite hard subject. So I'm not intending here to expose like I don't know, like to give a historical course of it. What I can say is that for us artists and filmmakers, since we had like this coup, the coup d'état, like which was like terrible for democracy in Brazil, was like in danger, and still is, by my personal point of view. That affects everything, of course. By that time that it happened, we were in film school, in Cuban film school. We needed to talk with our ministry, and it happened that in the next day we didn't have a culture ministry no more anymore. So actually, like there was like this big shock of changing government suddenly in Brazil. Sometime after, everything was shaked actually, and it comes before. As I said, is not my intention to discuss like history deeply here, but actually, what happened is that I can only speak in a personal way. When I came back from Cuban film school, international film school experience, I noticed like big changes in the country. Why I'm speaking all of this? Because I had the opportunity to come to Switzerland and to study, to keep studying. And I think when I got back there in Brazil, I already had like some distance towards the problems. And I'm not speaking about a distance like in an arrogant way that I can observe all of them like from my place. And no, I just had some distance towards something that was a grief for me. That was like the city, which happens to be Rio, which is like marvelous city, and at the same time very strange city, very weird city, where everything can happen. What happened to you? Like I need to fabricate some audiovisual discourse to address what was going on there. We were so shocked about this pandemic. For example, it started the big news from the Western side was like Italy, many people dying per day. And in Brazil, it could have been avoided actually, because we had here in Europe, like many people asked me like, oh, but many people are dying in your country because your country is poor, and you don't have like the means to vaccinate people. And I mean, it's crazy because I heard it many times, and actually this is not true. Like we have quite good actually public health system, and what happens is that there is sabotage. There is no public will in terms of the president, let's say like that, because for me he's not a president, but there was no public will of his part in the federal sense to take measures against this pandemic. And he actually was like laughing about it. He was like making it like not big thing, not big deal. The result was that, I mean, the local chiefs, they were trying to organize themselves, but there was a sabotage. And then, like, of course, like many people died. It could have been arrived much before. There's also like many other details on it because it's Brazil. So again, I don't master it, and I'm not intending to master it now. But my point was like, I want to speak about that, but also like without showing like misery, because it's also like has been a very long discussion of Latin American cinema since, like, for example, very important Brazilian filmmaker from the new age, the Nouvelle Vague, let's say, the new wave Brazilian cinema, Glauber Rocha. he was addressing it in Italy. This thing of I mean this subject of how to speak about the misery and how to formulate it. There is this the responsibility of somehow of representation, and it doesn't lead necessarily to a moral question, but actually we are producing like discourse, and especially when it comes to documentary, but not only. We have to think. I wanted to express my mourning towards this question because many people were dying in that city and in that country in larger sense, and the public power was like completely I'm not sure if completely, but quite stuck. And I happen to be in a privileged zone because Rio de Janeiro is like quite marvel city, but quite complex city. So it's also like a city which is divided in two, and it leads also to like class discussions, like sort of ghetto logics that needs to be worked still, like lots of work. I was in this privileged part and I was watching how everything seemed to be like normal, and I wanted to address actually my pain. Sometimes under something normal, we are hiding like many things, and I was trying to mix this digital context in a fragmentary statics with super H to produce another sense that could lead to reflection or even more abstract language, but could like lead some little doubts in the spectator who are seeing that and find it a bit bizarre. That was my intention as a try, like as essay, as I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciated, I mean, the opening shot of this piece of it's almost like this rhythm you create. I think you're somewhere in the streets of Rio. This one guy passes by on a bike, and some people are walking across the center, it seems to be. And you kind of like repeat that over and over again. And it felt all too familiar of that time. It felt like the same day every day. And like time is just stopped and nothing is getting better.
Yes,
Not to
yes.
sound bleak or anything, but
I'm glad to hear that.
but yeah, that's what it evoked for me of like, oh, okay, this sameness that just like cannot be unbroken. And how do we fix it? Yeah. And thank you for highlighting like what was going on. And I guess like my big thing is when people make pieces like this, especially now, it's like, I mean, I can't imagine how many pieces people have made reflecting on, the pandemic at its height and the intense waves that had come through, 2 years after. How you feel looking at this, what progress has been made. Yeah.
I think this is a subject that's it's quite related to politics, and in this year we will have like elections in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
so it will be like quite agitated year, let's say like that. What I can say in terms of maybe medical situation is that, and I'm not a doctor, but I've been observing that, I mean, Brazil like demonstrated in spite of the president who is there making like anyways making nothing actually or many things against culture, and I'm not saying that because I have necessarily it's not like an infantile like a personal problem. It's just like you realize that he's causing damage towards people's lives, and he's part of actually of big sabotage so of our institutions, our teachers, our culture in general. It's in spite of it, Brazil could get somehow organized to vaccine people. In this way, like the public system worked when people had the will and the possibility to make it operate correctly. Well, what I can say now from sort of distance that it's something that we cannot still measure. Maybe we can measure like in terms of statistics, but in this point, I think it's not only about Brazil. There is this affair, like this memory question that is like, for example, here nobody is speaking about COVID anymore, and I understand also like people are tired, people wants to like just hang on, get out, like of course, I mean it should be like normal, very problematic word because actually what what really means like coming back to normality after this big trauma. I think it's something that I can't answer, but I can formulate like a sort of extension of this of it, because Brazil also, like as other countries in Latin America, but especially Brazil, has a big problem with memory in terms of institutions. Like for example, we had our Cinematheque burning. How can you stand that? Like the people who had made the history of the cinema in your country and in the world, because it doesn't belong only to the country. Like, and I mean, in the symbolic way. So we have those files like burned. So it's completely like nonsense. But all this to say that yes, I think now we still have the chance to question normality, because of course, like people, I'm not here to moralize the discussion, like to say, oh no, nobody should like make parties, make no. But I'm saying that it's important to come back to the memory and to what happened, because we need still to process that as society, I think.
It's pretty well put. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think I'm about to wrap up, but yeah, if you have any closing things you want to say, or upcoming like exhibitions or screening of your work, yeah, speak to it.
Thanks. Well, actually, now I have like, I have many collaborators now. Like, I've been in lots of projects, and now I'm kind of concluding one of some of them. For example, this film, Sound of Time, like I Suoni del Tempo, which is like co-production with Italian A Mode Archives. Now the film is happened to be like in. I mean, the film is doing its career. I'm also like starting other projects that are still like surprise for, because it's surprising for me still. So I can barely formulate it. One of my biggest partners, which happens to be like Tetsuya Maruyama. We are thinking curatories for Super H in Brazil. He's already been doing that. For example, has been in Mono no Aware. One of my projects is like to move this curatory with Tetsuya in other countries in order also to provide more an extension of this new wave of Brazilian experimental, which is happening right now, for example, in South City of Brazil, which is named like Curitiba. They are making the first pan experimental film festival. They're bringing like many authors. It's quite interesting. I would like to invite you to take a look at it. So this is like maybe one of the red lines, and the other red lines, I think. I mean, as I am still like working on that, I'd rather like concentrate, but hopefully I can share it with you like soon, and I hope like that we can stay in touch. And I'm also like quite curious about the other interviews, like because I think your podcast can be a way of diffusion, and it's already a way of diffusion of that allows people to meet, like even in different space, because we share this common passion, like a film, material, and Super Age.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's so thoughtful of you. And yeah, I hope it keeps growing and the community, yeah, keeps growing itself. And yeah, I definitely want to see it take on another life as well, of hopefully maybe programming like public access screenings. Maybe in the works right now. I'm trying to speak with some folks I know in New York to maybe do like a test run, but I think that'd be very sweet with the people who've been on so far. If you have a film that you like that we talked about that could be screened, and then doing maybe like a virtual film festival. I don't know. Whoever's listening right now, let me know if this is a good idea. I
Yeah,
haven't publicly announced this yet, but I have been in talks. But yeah, I don't know. It's
that's
just
great. I'm quite optimistic towards all these things, because there is this new wave of. I mean, I don't know if I should call it like this, but it's how it happens to come to my vocabulary now, like this new wave of experimental cinema that we're living right now. So it will also take time to. But I think you are making like avant-garde gesture.
mhm.
Yeah. So congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being part of this. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Amelia.
That concludes the 7th episode of the Celluvoid. If you want to check out more of Nikolas's work, check out his Vimeo at his full name, Nikolas Candido. And while you're at it, Feel free to follow his Instagram at niko.las.candido. If you like listening to these artist talks, feel free to check out the Celluvoid's Instagram page at the Celluvoid. I share and curate additional content that will go along with the people I interview, but also other film-related posts. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.